In the first instance, I want to say greetings to the family and friends who will be watching this small video. I want to say a special thanks and a congratulations to my brother Chuck, who is about to receive an honorary doctorate degree from Southern Illinois University. I want to add that my brother has received PhD through his work, through his dedication, his tenacious dedication to secure the human rights of all peoples, but in particular peoples of color and peoples of African descent. My first conscious um, thought about his activity was when we were very, very young, maybe 13 and 15. This farm owner, one who classifies themselves as white, made an arrangement with my father to have my brother Chuck and myself to come and do some work for him, and that he would feed us. So we did the work, and when it came time to eat, we went on the back porch to wash up and was waiting for them to invite us into the house for lunch. But instead of inviting us into the house, he brought food in some tin dish that you would serve an animal in, like a dog or something, and was going to have us eat on the porch. So my brother looked at me and looked at him and said, "Thank you very much," and motioned for me to get up. So I followed him. We got up. We walked down to the little village square, a place called Black Jack, Tennessee, or Lamont, Tennessee, and we ordered bologna sandwich and some soft drink. But thinking about the action that my brother took, that bologna sandwich and that soft drink was the best tasting food I'd ever had. So that was the first time I had seen him stand up in the defense of humanity, of human rights, of the demand for dignity. And I was certainly impressed by that. And when I was in elementary school, and I think he was in high school, we moved to a school in a town called Mounds, Illinois. And of course, we had problems moving into the community because we were new. Our nickname was New Papa. So we had to prove ourselves to our classmates that we deserved to be there. So that was the first struggle in school. Then in the town itself, which was completely segregated, there were two schools. One school accommodated students of African descent, and the other school accommodated those who classified themselves as white. Along about my senior year, they decided to integrate the school bus. And they chose 5 of us to ride the white school bus. And of course, there were problems there. My brother went on to college, and started some action there in with reference to the housing, and received some progress. But he and I were still rebels. We wanted to do something. We wanted to make some changes. We had grown up in a society where there was complete white domination. We were sharecroppers. We worked on white people's land, where white people were the boss. Uh, it was a step up from chattel slavery. Um, and I've heard my father take some indignities. Um, there was a discussion between the landowner and my father about some idea. And my father said, "Well, I think," and then the man interrupted my father and said, "I will do your thinking for you." These kind of things had a lasting impression on me. Now, my father also had an uncanny way of locking up those racist jaws. Um, he was clever enough to use language that would talk about them in the third person with their being present, and they could say nothing. So I learned a lot from him in terms of how to manipulate my way through the society without, without getting hurt. And this was a great help to my brother and myself once we joined an organization to pursue the kinds of victories that we had been dreaming about and struggling with all our lives. We joined a group in Southern Illinois called the Cairo Nonviolent Freedom Committee, and we were working on desegregating the public swimming pools, libraries, etc., etc. There were a lot of arrests and a lot of police brutality. We ended up meeting a lady, a sister named Ruby Doris Smith from one of the Carolinas, and a brother named Charles Dunlap. They were members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And as we talked to them, we uh, we joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, continued the projects in Cairo, Illinois, and then across the river to Missouri, a little town called Charleston, Missouri. We had an enormous project over there. And I understand where the relationship between Southern Illinois at Cairo, which should have been called Cairo, it was named after a city in Egypt, in Africa. Um, Cairo, Illinois was where the Ohio and Mississippi rivers junction. And it was like a tri-state area. On one side there was Kentucky, on the other side there was Missouri, and where we were Illinois. So the distance was not that far between Cairo, Illinois, and Charleston, Missouri. We were both, of course, experienced police brutality in Charleston, Missouri, and a lot of jail time in Charleston, Missouri. We left once the project was completed. We left there and went further south into Georgia and Mississippi. When we were in Georgia, Chuck and a sister named Bernice Johnson, a sister named Bertha Gober, and Cordell Reagan, and one other person, started a group called the Freedom Singers. This group job was to not only work in the field, of course, organizing and participating in the movement, but also to travel north, carrying the message the struggle of the movement, to the north, using it as a newspaper, telling the news, explaining the struggle, and also as a recruitment tool to inspire students to take 1 year off of school at least and come into the South to help us with our organizing efforts, to recruit some teachers to come, because we had begun to organize freedom schools, because a lot of the young students had been expelled from school because of their participation in the movement. So the Freedom Singers had a dual job: to carry the news through song and to work in the field in order to gain the the thoughts and the actions of the people, to go and represent those thoughts and actions in the North. Of course, Chuck was was kind of impetuous and spontaneous. He didn't back up from confrontation, and he would. As a matter of fact, I remember at one point in Atlanta, Georgia, he and some of his colleagues just walked into a Ku Klux Klan rally. Just walked in and started walking down the aisle. At first, the Klan was just in shock because they were in a coma. They couldn't believe this was happening. But when they came out of their coma, they started beating and throwing chairs and missiles and stuff. Chuck barely escaped with his life. As a matter of fact, my senior brother and I were watching TV down in Southern Illinois, and there was a news clip showing Chuck climbing over a fence with blood coming out of the back of his the back of his head. And we were sitting there watching in shock. Well, we didn't have we didn't have a computer, and so we had to rush to try to find a telephone, call the Atlanta, Georgia office of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to try to get some news as to what was happening. But I think Chuck had gone to the hospital and got patched up. It wasn't serious, but the blood, we didn't know how serious it was. So Chuck worked on a number of projects. He worked on a project up in the Delta of Mississippi, around Greenwood and Greenville, Mississippi. And he also came to a project that I was a coordinator of down in Southwest Mississippi, in a city called Natchez, Mississippi. So he and I worked together. He and I worked together down there. So I think that Chuck has earned his PhD many times over as he struggled and fought and sacrificed to represent the aspirations of the people. Our education came from the people's thoughts and action. Our job was to create local leadership, to create a mass, M-A-S-S, mass organization, instead of going in there as some vanguard group, leading the people. We wanted the people to develop local leadership, and this is what we did. So the education that we received from the movement of the people and the sharing of information that we had with the people is earning a PhD through the work and the sacrifice and through the learning from the masses of the people. So we want to thank Southern Illinois University for for awarding Chuck this PhD. But over 56, 57 years of struggle, Chuck has earned many PhDs. So we just want to encourage you, Chuck, to use this PhD, of course, to enhance your work in informing, organizing, mobilizing, and struggling with the people. Thank you, and forward ever, backward never.